Hey, writer, if you're ready to level up, then buckle up. Get your pen and paper ready. It's time for another episode of the Art and Business of Writing podcast.
Hey guys, welcome back to another edition of the Art and Business of Writing podcast. I'm your host, Chris Jones, where today I'm joined by my good friend and fellow podcaster and creative, Tim Brien. Tim, tell the guests a little bit about who you are, what you do, and what you get into.
Well, Chris, thank you so much for having me on the show. I am a binge listener to your show, and it's so inspiring to hear you every time. I run a few podcasts here and there. I run the Create Art podcast, and my newest venture is Find a Podcast About. I'm a writer, I'm a painter, I'm a musician. You know, you jack of all trades. Even at work now, I'm known as the podcast guy. So I run a few podcasts for my day job, which is every podcaster's dream. You know, your day job turns into your passion, which is a great thing. But yeah, I'm just an all-around arts kind of guy. I've got a master's in theater that I never use, and I got the student loans to prove that to everybody. But yeah, I really enjoy art and creativity, and I think it's a thing that a lot of people they don't understand it. And I know we're going to talk creativity here today. But that's been one of my passions, is to not totally demystify art, but to allow other people to join in the joy that I get from art, and to show the importance of that in your 9 to 5 job and into your personal life.
Sweet, man. Yeah, like on your Create Art podcast, I love the tagline. It says, create more than you consume. One, like, how'd you come up with that?
Well, oh my gosh, I got to thank my wife for that one. She is awesome with stuff. She doesn't listen to my podcast because she figures that she hears everything that I do anyways. So she's heard me talk enough. So she doesn't want to, turn on her phone and listen to me talk some more. But that actually came from her while I was doing the precursor to Create Art podcast. I used to run a podcast called KDOI podcast, which stands for Chemo's Den of Iniquity. Nobody knew what that was. And I actually put that show on another podcast that was reviewing podcasts called Podcast Rodeo Show with Dave Jackson. And he goes, "What the heck is KDOI? You should make this, you should title the show what it's about." So I was like, well, let me, title it Create Art Podcast. And I was using the whole create more than you consume in the old podcast. And I thought, that's a great tagline. Let's bring it over into the new podcast. And now this new podcast, we're celebrating 2 years of podcasting. I've been doing this stuff since 2006. But KDOI and Create Art Podcast have been going on now for, 6 years.
Wow, that's phenomenal. No, the whole idea of just creating more than you consume, I think just as a creative, I mean, and you can speak to this too, I'm sure. I consume sometimes most of the time I try to be conscious about how I consume. Like I try to consume with some sort of deliberate plan. Like I want to learn how to do maybe more email marketing, or I want to learn how to do like deep work practice, or I want to learn how to, work on like stuff related to book creation. So I'll look up a lot of videos and I'll read articles on that. But then it gets to the point where my consuming becomes procrastination. Does that ever happen to you, or are you familiar with that?
Oh yeah, absolutely. You get so focused on a project, and you want to get all this information about it. You want to get because the final product that if you're going to monetize it, you want to have thought up all the questions that people will have, You want to appear to be knowledgeable, and you focus on all this research and all that, all the minutia around that you never start the project, and it gives you an excuse not to start the project. Recently, there was a podcast conference event planner, Chris Mose, and he put out a book called Starting Ugly. And that whole book is about just do it. Just get it out there and do it. You can fix it later, but get the product out there, because if you never get the product out there, nobody gets to see it. And the thing I like about your podcast, and I'm going to fanboy here on you for just a minute. I hope you don't mind. But you handle the topics, you have the knowledge of the marketing, the business aspect of it, that a lot of people don't have. And a lot of people don't find, I'm going to use air quotes here because that's what I do. So, everybody just put in your mind, Tim's doing air quotes. You tackle the not so sexy part of artistic creation, whether it be with books or painting or anything like that. Obviously your expertise is writing in books, but we got to think. We got to have our artistic mindset, and we got to have our marketing business mindset, and meld those two together and create something that, well, first off, people are going to want to support. People are going to want to give us money with their hard-earned money to go ahead and support our vision. And I guess my question to you is, how, with all that knowledge of marketing and how books are made and editing and all that kind of good stuff, not how do you keep on going with dealing with the not sexy part of creation?
That's a great question. The reality is that I had to learn years ago. I'd probably say 3, 4, maybe 5 years ago. I used to complain a lot. I used to complain about how much I hated the quote unquote, like you said, the air quotes, the non-creative side of writing, and that being I've always liked the business side, but it was the business side underneath of process, like structuring it, putting organization under it, figuring out how to disseminate, whatever it is I'm trying to do, whether it's trying to figure out how to put organization to the book or how to put organization to my marketing plans, like being deliberate about how I use social media or being deliberate about how I use my email marketing. All of that stuff to me, like I just wanted the sales part, because I'm like really a hybrid person. Like I'm a maven and a salesman, like in the Malcolm Gladwell universe there, where you have like the connector, the maven, the salesman. And I'm very much a maven and a salesman and a connector too. But I like the sales part. So I love pushing the product and I love creating the product. But there's always the stuff in between that I had issues with. I would say it's not creative. This isn't very creative because I think, in the sales side, the art of persuasion has a lot of creativity. How can I persuade someone to buy this book? How can I show them that this book is definitely meant for them? How can I find a way to write their story into this book so that they will buy it because they resonate with it? So that part was very challenging for me and a lot of fun. And of course, the writing part, just putting the book together and putting the story together, and all that was a lot of fun. But then it was just all the minutia in between, having to go through the editing phases of it, having to go through the proofreading, having to restructure sections and chapters, having to go through iterations of the book design. All that stuff I just found to be not fun at all. Even the financial side of it, just figuring out where to, putting money to things. And so I had to sit down and ask myself, okay, what part of this is not creative and what part of it is creative? And you look at it and you say, it's all creative, and figuring out how that all lumps under creative. And so for me, I had to say, okay, the process is just as creative as the actual product and creating the product. And so what I do now is I look forward to the process. Like to me, process is everything. I almost kind of flipped my entire mindset about it. And I love the process now. I love sitting down and crunching the numbers and figuring out, well, what's it going to cost me to put this project together and how am I going to make that happen? Or I like sitting down and looking at, well, what's the production schedule look like and how do I adhere to the production schedule and who's going to be a part of this production schedule? Who are my editors? Who are my proofreaders? Who's my designer? Like I had to figure out where the fun was in that. And now I find that to be like one of the most exciting parts is planning the actual book now and actually planning the steps. So I think it's a mindset shift. I think we have to get to the mind frame that the entire process of writing, creating, and selling a book is creative. It's all a creative process. And I know people look at sales as a dirty word, like, oh, selling. I don't sell things. I don't like to sell things, but that's what we're doing. We're in the business not of writing nonfiction books or in the business of writing fantasy books or in the business of writing poetry. We're in the sales of poetry. We're in the sales of nonfiction book. We're in the sales of fantasy or mystery or whatever that is. And so we've got to be able to love the selling aspect and like totally take that out of the corner of being sleazy like the car salesman or like the guys online with the Ferraris, trying to get you to buy stuff. But looking at it in the sense that I've written something that's going to help somebody. I've written something that's going to change someone's life. I've written something that's going to give somebody who's had a tough week a great escape on Friday, Saturday, and Sunday, where they can just read and enjoy and lose their day or their week or their troubles in a book. So getting that, in our heads, I think changes the whole game. Does that answer the question well for you?
It absolutely does. And that whole mindset that you're talking about, it took me, now I've got a couple of years on you. Okay. But it took me until, oh gosh, I ran into a guy by the name of Seth Godin, and I don't even know how I did it. I don't. His name just kept on popping up, so I started following him, and I really looked at my art as kind of a business where I'm providing a new viewpoint for somebody, and in order to provide that viewpoint, I got to get it in front of their eyes somehow. And so when I am saying, hey, come to my website and do this, and if you want to support the show, do this, I don't feel bad about that because the world runs on money. We can't get around it at this point. We would love it if we could just create our art and be able to survive just on that. But for a lot of us here, and I know for a lot of my listeners, and maybe for a lot of your listeners, we got our 9-to-5 job. That it may not be sexy. It pays the bills, and a lot of times we're doing this as a side hustle or something along those lines. And we need to be mindful that there is 2.5 million podcasts out there right now. There's a lot of people trying to get everyone's attention. And we need to find the way to get through all that minutia, all that static, to get to the people that we need to get to. And we need to, figure out who our audience is. How do we define our success? How do we define what our smallest viable audience is? And market to those people. Those people want to be marketed to. Those people want to find out more about what we're doing. My stuff, my poetry is not for everybody. As a matter of fact, my kids probably won't read any of my poetry until they're like 21, and maybe not even then, because some of it's risque and I don't want them to read it. But that's okay, because for the people that it's for, that's who I market it to. So yeah, definitely you answered my question. And I wish there was a way that we could get into like the art schools and all that kind of stuff and, show people the artistry of marketing, because it really is an art on how people do it. It's not about swindling people out of their money. It's about how do we show our stuff to other people? Do we do it at a book festival in Fredericksburg, Virginia, which that's what you do with your team and all that kind of good stuff.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And you raised some really good kind of follow-up questions and some of the things you said. One of the things you talked about though is just cutting through that noise. Because it's like we live in this culture where social media and just everything is so pervasive, like, and we feel like we have to be on everything. I have to be on Facebook. I have to be on Instagram. I have to be on Snapchat. I have to be on Twitter. I have to be on LinkedIn. I have to be on every new app that comes out because I might find somebody there who might buy my book. And Seneca has this phenomenal quote, and it says, "He who is everywhere is nowhere." And so it's about dialing in, I think. And like, what are your thoughts on that? Like, what are your thoughts on like really targeting, not being everywhere per se, because it's too difficult, it's too time consuming to be everywhere. Because when you're trying to be everywhere, you're going to start cutting into your creative time. So, like, what do you think we should do to dial in, or how do you think we should dial in, and what should we focus on as creatives in terms of just the social landscape?
Well, we need to figure out what we're good at. We need to really sit back and figure out, okay, what am I good at? You definitely need to touch a little bit of the social media, and you got to figure out where your audience is on social media. Maybe they're on TikTok. Maybe they're a big podcast listener, binger. Maybe there's somebody that, they're tired of the digital world and they like to, go to a book festival and feel the books and talk to the authors and have that kind of an experience. So it's really knowing yourself, what you can do, and then knowing where your audience is and really doing the research on finding, where does my audience live at? You can be on all these platforms, and you can what I call shotgun. And full disclosure, I used to do it. You can shotgun your stuff out there, and basically what that is that you're throwing it out there and seeing what sticks against the wall. But there's so many people doing that right now that you are never going to hit your audience by going that approach. If you find out, what you're good at, and excel at that, and create that community for your audience, they will find you because you'll know where to target your efforts. And you're right. I like what you said. If you're on all these social media platforms, you're cutting into your creative time. And marketing can be creative, but marketing the right way is even more creative and more effective versus, doing TikTok, doing Instagram, doing mighty networks, doing all these things. Focus it in, create the community, create a place for people to come in, whether it be an art gallery, whether it be a book festival, and all that kind of good stuff. Because you're not going to be everywhere all the time, and you don't want to be, because then that dilutes your message, that dilutes your art. Then what you're trying to do is you're trying to do art for everybody, and I'm not. I'll tell you that right now. I'm not trying to do art for everybody. I'm trying to do art that I enjoy, that people of the same mindset, not necessarily having an echo chamber, but of the same mindset, of the same inquiring mind. Inquiring minds want to know, but it's somebody that is always questioning something, questioning why this is here, why this is there, and all that stuff. If you can really know yourself and then know who your audience is, you're going to be not only effective in the marketing aspect of it, but you're really going to be filling a need that your audience wants you to fill.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I fully agree with that. Like, you really, yeah, you got to know who you are, know who your audience is, and figure out where people are responding. Because I think that we get caught up in the numbers game, the vanity metrics of how many followers I have, how many people are liking my stuff, liking my posts, or whatever the case may be. And it's like, okay, well, when you look at the metrics of that, how much of that is returning to you? How many of these people are buying your work? How
Yeah.
many? I
Yeah.
mean, it's great to have 10,000 followers, but how many of those followers are engaged followers? How many people are actually talking and having conversations on your page on a regular basis? And I think that's the thing is, rather than continuing this head beating cycle of trying to grow followers for the sake of growing followers, I think just finding who are the dedicated people and then moving those people into maybe a Facebook group where you can specifically talk to people who want your stuff, or focusing on building your email list where people have specifically opted in to get stuff from you. So then it becomes, okay, now we're dealing with permission based stuff. Now we're dealing with people who actually have not just looked at my stuff and liked it or whatever, but they're actually following me into something. They're following me onto my email list. They're following me into a Facebook group. They're following me maybe into some sort of like a weekly author call on Zoom or something, but really figuring out how do we really dial into the deeper side of marketing versus like the shallow vanity metrics that, yeah, they feel good, but at the end of the day, I can still put my hand in my pocket and touch my leg. You know what I mean?
Exactly. Exactly. Now, Chris, since you're, you deal a lot with authors and other entities around authorship, how do you deal with an author that all they want to do is they just want to put out their book and then let the money roll on in? Um, what's some of the techniques that you use to get them inspired to go, you really should do this book signing, you really should do this, that, the other thing, um, to get them more into a marketing mindset on their work?
Yeah. Well, the first thing I do is I definitely coach them on the fact that Amazon isn't there to promote your work for you. You can stick your work on Amazon and it will just sit like it would sit on a bookshelf at a shop. It's no different. No one's going to love your work or believe in your work more than you and probably your mama. That's it. So what you've got to do is, I mean, you've got to hustle. You've got to think, okay, well, what are the steps I need to take? So I typically have writers we come up with a press release and we distribute that to the right channels. We figure out, well, who should receive this press release? Who would be interested in perhaps, working with me on some level of story or interviewing me on something, or what's newsworthy? What sort of angles can I pitch to somebody to get them to pick this story idea up from this book, or pick up even the concept of the book up as itself? Then it becomes about, okay, well, how do we get out into the public with it? How do we get on the podcast? We talk about developing a one-sheet bio where we can send that to podcast hosts, and we write the query letter to the podcast hosts, and we let them know, hey, we've enjoyed listening to this, particular podcast. It's very relevant. I have a topic that's very relevant. I've noticed that you've interviewed such and such a person who is very similar to me. I can add on to the learning that comes from that person. I think I'd be a great fit for your show and a great benefit for your audience. I'd love to talk to you. Here's a copy of my one sheet. Here's a copy, here's a galley of my book, and I'd love to hop on the show. So we're pitching hosts. If there's local media, we can do that too. We do the same thing to local media, trying to get into local media, whether that's getting a story written at an alumni newspaper or a regular standard newspaper, a local magazine. But I always tell people we do kind of the grassroots to national approach. Start grassroots and build just a big body of work before you go to the top of the food chain. And get people excited about the stuff you do. Talk about it. Be out in public, like you talked about, going to the book festivals. I mean, you got to think everything's grassroots. You're not Stephen King, where you've got a publicist who's working on your behalf, or you have a publisher who's out there making it happen for you, because the publisher knows, well, it's Stephen King. I'm going to get my money back, so it's beneficial for me to promote Stephen King. So you've got to think like a publisher. You've got to think, what are the ways, or what are the places that this book fits? Where can I take it? And start thinking about, taking action on that, creating an action plan step by step of where you need to be in order to be in front of your audience. Because sometimes you have to even think about places where you may not consider top tier, or not top tier per se, but like first level things. Like, so like if you're writing a book about teen alcoholism and you're going around doing shows, you can also go to boys and girls clubs and talk about that. You can go to, alternative schools and have, assemblies at alternative schools. You can go to places like Al-Anon or Teen Challenge. So you've got all these other sub-markets of groups and associations who would happily take you on as a speaker, and then you can further promote your books that way. So I really get them thinking whole brained marketing, not just like the standard, okay, I put it on Amazon, it's there, and I try to get on a podcast and it's there, and I post it on social media and it's there. But how do we really reach large segments of people, with various topics? Even I tell people to look at your chapters and figure out how many different subsegments can each chapter hit, because you've got the book as a whole, which you can sell as a whole thing, and then you can look at segments of the book and say, okay, if I've written a chapter about leadership, where can I talk about leadership? If I've written a chapter about how writing has changed in the pandemic, who can I talk to about that? What groups can I talk to about that? Or if I've written a book about how to teach kids about writing, are there schools that I can go to and talk to? So really then taking your book and breaking it down even into smaller segments.
Mm. So, Chris, what you're telling me is that the job isn't done once you, hit publish on Amazon. That's so, the 100,000 words that I wrote for a National Novel Writing Month. As soon as I hit that 100,000 and I go to Amazon and hit publish on that bad boy, what you're trying to tell me is my work ain't done?
No, sir. It's just beginning. That's where the fun begins, and it's something I encourage authors to do from the very beginning. I know a lot of people like to pants and just kind of write as they go, but I'll tell people, develop just a basic working level synopsis where you understand who your book is for, because you want to know right out of the gate before you start writing that you have an audience. You don't want to wait till you've written the book and discover that you don't have an audience, or you don't know who your audience is. Then you're behind the 8 ball. But just knowing all the things you need to know about your book, what books are similar to yours. That way, when people say, well, what's your book like? You can say, yeah, well, my book is very similar to, Tipping Point by Malcolm Gladwell, except I take these concepts and apply it to writing, or I take these concepts and I apply it to teaching, or whatever it may be. But really being able to understand, your elevator pitch to your book, and knowing where it fits in the marketplace. Know all that stuff way in advance. Like, understand the marketing side of your book before you even type on your keyboard the first word of your book. Just have a firm understanding of where you're going with it. It's almost like, I tell people, it's akin to programming Waze before you hop in the car. It's like, it does you no good really to try to program Waze while you're driving. Of course, it'll give you directions. It'll reroute you if you make mistakes, but why do that when you can pre-program it before you go and know the entire route ahead of time?
Exactly. And I think, again, we need to teach a class in these art schools and colleges and all that kind of good stuff. We really need to, and not just think about the end of the project, but we need to think about, okay, what happens the next day after I hit, after I'm done, saved it, it's all edited down, looking great. What happens on day 1, basically, of your marketing plan? And even before we even write a word in that novel, I'm picking up on what you said about, knowing who your audience is first. Because if you write a novel, and I can tell you, I'm writing my first one as we speak right now, and that is a lot of work. That is a ton of work just to write the thing. It takes a long time. I have a lot of respect for Stephen King. I have a lot of respect for all the novelists that are in my library right behind me here, and it takes a ton of work. But if we start with who is this going to be for, while we're marinating it in our brain, then once we get it all edited and good to go, then that marketing plan that a lot of people don't think is sexy is going to be much easier. You'll be able to fit into that marketing plan and get it out to that audience that you've already researched that's waiting for it. And you can, do that marketing plan while you're writing the book.
Oh yeah.
You can put out little snippets here and there. I mean, that's what I've done with my novel, which still isn't done yet. So I know, Chris, you're gonna beat me over the head with it. I've only got 94,000 words. Leave me alone. But I mean, it's a way to do it that 50 years ago, 20 years ago, people weren't thinking about doing their novels like that. But now, with the technology that we have and with the interconnectedness that we have, it is a viable way to do it, to build that audience. And then, once they get the final product, they're your super fans. They're going to be the people that are not only going to buy your book, but they're going to do one important thing for you that you can't do. They're going to tell their friends about their book. So, you'll have your network of maybe 100 people, 100 super fans, but then each of those super fans has 100 people that they know that they'll talk about that book, and maybe 5 of that one person, that one person's super fan picks up that book that you would have never reached in your marketing plan, and then you're good to go. Now, I'm not going to say you're going to make 6 figures tomorrow, but it's going to be an easier time, and it's going to be more of an enjoyable time for you to do that, the non quote unquote non-creative side of the work.
Very true. So you're writing a novel. So what is noveling taught you about like writing and writing organization?
Oh my God. Then I need to be more organized. Well, what I've got, and let's see here. Let me start back a little bit. So I do National Novel Writing Month, and I also do National Poetry Writing Month. And with National Novel Writing Month, I have an idea, marinating in my brain about what I'd like to write. And this year, I was going to go one direction. I was going to write this one novel that's been marinating in my brain for about a year. But I decided, you know what? At the last minute, literally 2 days before November started, that I hadn't finished the novel that I started last year, and I really wanted to finish it. So I pivoted, and my goal was to finish this novel, which I haven't done yet, but I'm okay with that. And what it taught me about organization is that I planned out, for my personal life. I told my wife, hey, listen, National Novel Writing Month is coming, so I'm going to need time in my day to go ahead and write this. I let my 9-to-5 job know, guys, I'm writing a novel and I'm doing a podcast episode every day. So I'm going to need a little time to do this. Luckily, my job is very understanding. My wife is more than understanding. And my kids, not so understanding, but, they're 7, so that's okay. But setting that time aside and figuring out, okay, when am I going to write this? When am I most energized and enthused to write about it? I never used to be a morning person. Now I am a morning person. And when I'm most enthused to write about it, I find that I get better work. I get more words out of it. And I set a daily goal for myself, which is what National Novel Writing Month does. They say, write a 50,000 word novel in 30 days. And each day you got to write 1,667 words. For a lot of people, they think, oh my God, that's a lot. It's not that much. It's a couple of pages, double spaced, 12-point font, and you're good to go. So if you break it down to, what do I need to get done today? What do I need to get done in this hour that I have, this hour of free time that I have? And you break it down that way, then you're good to go. Now, every day, I'm thinking about, where am I at in the novel? What do I want to have happen next? Okay, so that gives me a point A to point B for that day. I have a point A to point B for the entire novel, but then I break it down to, and I love what you said about the Waze app. You're on a journey, and you need to put that in there so you know where you're going. So what I do is, like I said, I have it. I know where the novel's going. I know point A to point B, and then I break it down, each day. What do I want to get done? Now, if I hit 2,000 words that day, fantastic. If I hit 1,500 words that day, fantastic. Did I get from point A to point B for that day? That's more what I care about. And how does that fit in with the overall novel? Is that getting me to my end point of that novel. That's how I do it. There's a bunch of different ways that you can do it in terms of writing a novel. This is my first time writing a novel, so I'm not an expert on it, but I also approach it the same way when I write poetry. And I've self-published on poetry. I've got 4 poetry books out there. That's how I work it with that. That's also how I work it with the 3 podcasts that I run. You have to break it down, and you have to go, okay, I'm only going to get so much done per day. So let's make it first. Let me make sure I have the energy, the time, and the motivation to do it. That's how I'm doing it.
No, I love that. I love that you went into all those things because I think they're all important. Because I think what happens a lot of the time, I've been plagued by this, is I'll say, okay, all I have is an hour today to write. That's not a lot of time to write. That makes me so mad that all I have is an hour to write. And then guess what I don't do? I don't write because I'm poo-pooing about the fact that I only have an hour, which when you look at it, that's a lot of writing time. You can do a lot of writing in an hour, 1, 2, and then compound effect. Okay, let's look at that over the course of a month. That's 30 hours of writing.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? It's like, so I'm sitting there poo-pooing about only getting an hour a day, and I'm not looking big picture like, wow, that's 30 hours that I could be sitting down writing. That's a lot of time. Even if I write 500 words, well, you're looking at, wow, that's 15,000 words in the course of a month. That's nothing to sneeze at, but I think that's that mindset that I think a lot of creators can fall into is we look at that and say, that's not much time. I want to have these gigantic romantic blocks of time. Like I think something I talk about a lot as authors is that we tend to romanticize writing. Like we get into this whole thing where I need to have, my candles lit and the music on and a cup of, glass of wine, and writing has to be this thing that I've seen in Hollywood. And it's not. Writing is dirty sometimes. Writing is just me pushing stuff aside from my desk, putting my headphones on so I block out all the noise around me and just getting into it, or grabbing a legal pad, sitting out on the front porch and just getting into it. Like it's not this thing where it's beauty all the time. If I can have a beautiful day like that where I don't have children running around me fighting over things, or I've got nothing going on in my day and I can just sit back and write in this perfect environment, great. But more often than not, that's just not the case,
Mm-hmm. Now, before you had kids, did you do that? Did you always, oh, well, I don't have kids. I've got, 20 hours in the day. I can write, till the cows come home. Was that an option for you, or did you have other things that got in your way?
I feel like I've always had kids, Tim. That's just where we're at this point in my life.
Oh yeah.
Where I can't remember a time when I didn't have them. But prior to that, so when my kids were ultra small, I had that time. When they were a little bit less intrusive, I had more of that time. And I was also willing to get up early. Like I was willing to sacrifice that time because I was getting better sleep.
Mm-hmm.
But now it's become where I do make a commitment with myself. So I've got time blocked into my schedule. Like 9:30 at night is when I prefer to do my writing because it's quieter. Things are settled down. I still have a good amount of energy. I typically catch a second wind around 4, 5, 6 p.m. So once I get my kids through their evening routine, get them into bed, then I hop back on and I'll write for a little bit or I'll create for a while. That time seems to be the best for me because the morning routine with my kids starts as early as 6. So I'm not about getting up at 5. So I just kind of flow through the morning. And then it's one of those things where I see it as a reward for me getting through the end of the day. Like, okay, now I've got this 9:30 time that I'm so eager to get to. So I look forward to that every day. So yeah, 9:30 at night, and I'll go from 9:30 and I'll make a hard stop at 11, give myself an hour and a half, which is plenty of time for me just to kind of dive in and do deep work on whatever project I'm working on. And I love it. It works very well for me.
Now, what's the deal with the 6 a.m.? Because my kids do it too. I'm going to tell you right now, I think it's a conspiracy. I really do. I think the kids are all, they've got access to the tablets. They're all, Instagramming and chatting with everybody. And because that's what my kids do. They're up at 6 and they're ready to go up until I put them to bed. And I've actually found that before I had kids, I was like, oh yeah, I can write, whenever I want. I can do all these things. I can paint, I can make music, and I didn't. And I didn't.
Yeah.
I squandered my time. And now that I have this, I don't want to call it a limitation because kids are not a limitation. Um, but I have these other demands on my time. I find that when I'm in my creative time, my creative space, that I am more efficient. There we go. I was going to say economical, but actually efficient with my time because I sit down with intention. And it sounds like you're doing the same thing too, from 9:30 to 11 at night. So I know never bug Chris 9:30 to 11 at night. That is his, trust me, he needs that time. As a dad of twins, Chris needs that. As I'm a dad of twins, I know Chris, he needs that time. So nobody bug him between those hours. Unless you've got a fantastic book deal that's going to make him $1 million, then you can bug him. But, if not, don't bother Chris.
No, but that's the truth. I think that's you hit the nail on the head, is that it's about the quality of the time, not the quantity of the time. What can you do with the time? Because I mean, I've learned something I've really been deliberate about most of this year is figuring out, how do I maintain an ongoing creative flow? Like, how do I get it to the point where it doesn't ever turn off on me? Because it's like I would feel the flow come in and I'd, I'm inspired to write, let's write. And then I would lose it. I'm like, I don't really feel like writing, even though I've got time right now. I'm just not feeling the flow. But then I started asking myself, well, how do I just maintain that flow? Like, and it's almost like meditation, kind of like, when you meditate, you're like, your mind is focused on something and you're kind of grooving with it. And so I do the same thing with writing. I'll just kind of find ways to keep my hand on writing all day long, whether that's having a book in front of me at my desk and I just touch it and thumb through it, or whether that's reading something really quickly, or whether that's going through some quotes or something, or whether it's actually jotting down ideas into a notebook. But it's staying in the flow, like staying on writing in some way, shape, or form all day long. And I found that's helped me so much, Tim. Like, my kids will go to the bus stop and I'll be waiting at the bus stop for my kids at 3:30, and I'll pop open my phone and I'll write down some notes, during that time. So I'm filling a little bit of time that I've got, like 20 minutes before the bus comes. I can use that 20 minutes to advance some more writing, or at their soccer practices, or wherever we may be where there's some sort of pause and I can fill that little bit of time with creative. I've really, really enjoyed that as a challenge. Like, how do I maintain this flow so that I'm always creating and it becomes almost like my default setting?
Now, let me ask you this: since you're the marketing guy as well, do you take that creative time, from 9:30 to 11, and think about, okay, what am I going to be? Let me plot out what I'm going to do for the next month, for the next year. So that creative time is you time to do some writing. But do you also think about what's coming down the pike? What do I need to get accomplished for this year, this month, this quarter?
I do. That creative time is very much a hybrid time most of the time. It's not just raw, like an hour and a half of writing. So what it becomes is me just looking at, okay, what's important right now. So right now I'm doing a revision of a book, a book that I wrote. So I'm going through these revisions, and then as I go through these revisions, then sometimes I'll switch gears and I'll start working on like cover thumbnails, and then I'll go from cover thumbnails to, where does this book need to go? Like who do I need to put this book back in the hands of again, or re-engage with this book. So yeah, it's hybrid time where I've got my Milanote open and I'm looking at my vision board while I'm sketching. So it's definitely hybrid time. Writing time comes when it comes, but yeah, I use my time to do anything related to like the entire creative process. Like I said, I see it all as one now. And so whatever I'm touching is what I'm touching at the time.
Good deal. Good deal.
Yeah. So we talked about, you talked about being a podcaster and about doing, a daily podcast. Like, what's that like? I mean, you seem to be a very prolific creator. Like, you've kind of nailed that one down, where you're writing poetry on a regular, you're podcasting on a regular, you're writing NaNoWriMo. Like, how do you get into this mindset that I need to be prolific to keep myself going? That whole mentality of like the shark, where it's like, if I stop swimming, I'll die. Because that's what I see when I see you. I'm like, Tim he's still swimming, he's still feeding.
Well, yeah, that's exactly my mindset is that I have all these crazy ideas in my brain. I call them crazy ideas that I need to get out and share with the world, whether they connect with a person or not. I need to get that out of my brain because I need to make more room for more ideas to keep on coming in my brain. Um, and it's nothing. When I was first starting out, I bought into the idea of, oh, it's mystical. I have to, I can only write when I've had 10 cups of coffee, and I have to have this steno pad, and I can only use this pen. And, I only write when inspiration hits me, like a fairy godmother. And as I matured in my journey, in my practice, I discovered that's not the case. We all, I truly believe we all have this creative spark in us. Maybe it's to write a novel, maybe it's to do a podcast, maybe it's to do music, what have you. But I believe that I got to get this stuff out so I can make room for more stuff. And somebody's going to enjoy it. I always joke, I paint like a 4-year-old on crack. I do, but I look at the stuff on my walls, and some of my friends are like, "No, I'd buy that. No, I'd buy that." And then I hand it to them, and I'm like, "Here, have it for free," because it's just, I like doing it. I like the process of doing it, but sometimes I look at it and go, it's not even for me, but it's for somebody else out there in the universe. So that's kind of my mystical woo-woo thing that, when I create something, it may not even be for me. It may be somebody needs to hear that, and it changes their life. It affects them. And who am I to deny them that life-changing experience? I can tell you that it's, if you see the bags under my eyes, it's not a whole lot of sleep, but I enjoy the process. I enjoy the final product. I've learned to enjoy the marketing behind it. But I also like the community to it. I mean, if I hadn't been writing and self-publishing and all that kind of stuff, I would have never ran into you in a million years because what am I going to do at a book writing festival? I've got my stuff on Amazon. That should be good enough. No, it's not good enough. It's the community around it. It's the people that you're going to meet. And that right there gives me a million stories that I can write about, or, a million, come up with a million podcasts that I can go out and produce or be inspired by or tap into. So, I mean, I'm always thinking of something to do creative wise. And it's just the way my brain is wired. But I think every one of us, because I see the work that you do, I could never, well, let me backtrack that because I hate using the word never. It would be difficult for me to put on a independent book festival like you do, and like you have done. That's a skill that I don't have yet. And I look at that and all the knowledge that you have of how to market a book, how to present a book, how to sell a book, how to inspire a author to buy in and go with you on that journey for them once they have the book done to selling that book to their audience. I don't have those skills yet. That's why I listen to your podcast. So that way I can pick up on those skills. That's besides the fact that you're a wonderful person to talk to and you're a really genuine person. But I'm also picking up all the stuff, all the knowledge that you have that I don't have, that I want to have. And that's why I do all this stuff. I hope that answers the question. I know there's an answer in there somewhere.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. And I think it's funny because likewise, that's why I get inspired by you. Like I think about how I'm wired. I'm wired like most creative people are in the sense that I am a perfectionist. Like I want things that I do to hit right the first time. And I know that's not even feasible. It's not even a thing. And I've learned that over time, but it still creeps in there every so often. But that's why I think that when I listen to your podcast or when I see what you're doing, this whole idea of just being prolific with your art, just putting it out there, putting it, like Seth Godin says, just ship it, just put it out there, put it out there. Like you're posting all the time. And when you do that, there's no time for perfection. Like you get good in volume, you get good in quantity by putting it out there. You just get better by default. But are you a perfectionist by nature yourself? And then two, did doing the things that you do, sharing your stuff as regularly as you do, did that help you like kind of break the spell?
Oh yeah, absolutely. Well, I'm not a perfectionist. I'm a big fan of, shipping it, starting ugly, just, knocking it out, and always looking for different ways to be inspired, different ways to be influenced. Because I used to be a perfectionist, and I wouldn't put anything out that people could see because it wasn't right. Yeah, that's when I was under the spell of, oh, it's a inspiration thing, and this magical fairy is going to fly over my head when I'm drinking 10 cups of coffee and knocking it out. So I used to be in that in that camp. I'm not there anymore. Um, there does need to be some refinement to the stuff that I do. And that's why, I am open to, a lot of things that you say, a lot of things that other podcasters say. I get that information in from them to help me refine my stuff that I've already put out there. Because if I don't refine it, then it's just gonna it's not going to be as effective as I want it to be, and I want it to touch people. Um, but yeah, it's that you come up with the best questions. I tell you, Chris, you come up with the best
I'm a journalist.
questions.
That's what I do.
I feel like I should get on my couch here and just, tell you about my childhood now. No.
Actually, I've got another really good one for you too, and I think it's very valuable for our listeners, Tim. And it's this
Mhm.
idea that I see you do, and it surrounds community. Like you're part of a podcast community. You're part of these various communities of very niched in people who do what you do. What is the value of that for you? And why should people do it?
You never know what you're going to get out of it. You really never know if you don't put yourself out there. I go with the intent that I'm going to make a new friend, and that friend is going to have an idea that is going to strike me. Now, do I know that's actually going to happen? No, but that's my intent, to join in that community and to see if there's somebody in that community that I can help them out. If they're having a problem doing something, I have a certain amount of expertise in doing things. I can help them out with that, or I can ask somebody for some help with whatever I'm doing. That community is kind of my, first level audience, I guess. I'll spout out ideas to them and they'll be like, not, refine this a little bit more. Tell me more about it. And then I'll do that, drill down into it and then present it to them again. And they're like, okay, yeah, now go run with that. And then I go run with it. And if I run into an issue, I can go back to those people and go, I'm at a block here. I don't know how to get around it. And they'll give me ideas. I may take them, or it may inspire another idea to get around that block. But that community is also going to, when you're not feeling the energy to do the creation, they're going to, if they're good people, they're going to kick you in the butt and say, listen, you need to, get back to your practice, get off your pity pot for whatever's happening and go create. Now, granted, there's some things that happen in your life that you do need to resolve before you can create. But for me, I get a lot of encouragement from these communities, and I try to provide as much encouragement as I get. That way, we are all winning in the end. We're all creating in the end. So, like uh, when you were doing, oh gosh, what year was it? It was before the pandemic, the year before the pandemic. So I'm sitting there at, the Fredericksburg Independent Book Festival there, and there was a guy putting out his very first book of poetry, and that's all he had. Now I had my books out there, and I sat there and I talked with him, and he's a Marine. Well, I'm prior Air Force, so we had the writing connection, we had the military connection, and that was a great time. That was definitely a great time. I bought his book, he bought my book, and I've talked to him here and there, and he's come back and asked me questions about poetry and publishing, and what he should do, and I've given him an advice. But if I didn't put myself out there in the community, if I didn't take advantage of the community that you set up, that connection would have never happened. So I have to thank you for setting up the community, because you've done it. You can do it on the big scale. And then the rest of us, it's up to us to come to that community that you've set up and make those connections that would have never happened unless we put ourselves out there.
Oh, yeah, very true. Very true. Wow, dude, good stuff, Tim. Good stuff.
Yeah. So what are you looking at to do in 2022? What can we expect from Chris? Because I know we're going to get some great things.
I've got some really ambitious irons in the fire for 2022.
Nice.
Yeah, part of that is right now I'm currently in what I call a drawdown period. It's the first time I've ever done it. I've completely turned off all my social media. I haven't been on in 15 days, period, like none. And I've been really just focusing on like channeling all my creativity, like using, because like I was realizing I was losing a lot of time to social, and I was like, I need to really take that time and pour it into some stuff that I'm trying to get done, because I really want to advance some projects. So I'm working on a couple of things. One, I'm challenging myself to get a standard traditional publishing deal. I want to, it's kind of a lifestyle, kind of like a guinea pig thing I'm doing with myself. I'm challenging myself to follow every step outlined by those who are experts and see if I can actually make their formula work for me. So it's kind of like playing science on myself, you know? So that's something I've got planned for 2020, 2020. Oh my gosh, 2022.
2020 is the year that never ends.
I know. So that's one of the things I'm trying to challenge. And two, I've been working on developing a new platform for authors and writers. So that's something I want to put out and play. I've got a lot of it set up. And now I just got to put it into play. But I've put that one on hold for probably Q2 of 2022 while I work on this writing project. So that's what I'm working on right now. And it's exciting. I'm having a good time with it. I'm having a good time, like just learning all these things about how traditional publishing works, how agents work, how to write like queries and full proposals and what to expect. So I'm having a really good time, like taking all this information in, because in my mind, even if I don't win, I still win, because now I've got this wealth of information that I can just pass down to independent authors and say, hey, look, you know what? Here's the stuff that the big boys are doing that you should be doing anyway. So I win no matter what, but I'm really looking for that big win, just for the satisfaction of saying, okay, yeah, I've actually done this, and what they tell you is true. It does work if you follow the formula.
Excellent. Well, let me make a few phone calls, and I'll talk to Stephen King, and because I got him on speed dial here somewhere, so we'll make that happen for you. No, that's fantastic, because we have to. One thing that I've really learned and I'm holding on to is the whole project management of the projects that you're working on. To take a project management approach to it. I got into project management, oh gosh, a bunch of years ago, when I was counseling transitioning soldiers into ending their career with the military and then going out and being a civilian. And just that whole mindset of project management and getting stuff done, getting, looking at forming what the big picture is, and then chipping away at that every day, every day, every day. So much so that last year, about this time, in 2020, the year that'll never end, I sat down for 3 days and plotted out everything for 2021 that I wanted to do. And I used a program called Free Camp. They're not sponsoring this; they need to. Free Camp will bill you $100 later on. But I used a project management tool. I taught myself that tool. And in just a few days, just a matter of days, I plotted out everything I wanted to do, dates, projects, everything like that. And I got to tell you, when I did that, I got about 95% done of what I wanted to do. And that's what I'm going to be doing probably next week, is I'm going to sit down, take a few days, and then plot out everything in 2022, because it worked so well in this year and it helped me keep on track. You said, hey, Tim's always putting out stuff. Well, the secret is set up a project, set up a plan for yourself for the entire year, and then hold yourself accountable to making sure those things happen. Now, I said I got 95% of the stuff done. 95% in school is an A. I'm happy with an A. I'm good with that. I know life happens, especially to me. Life likes to happen a lot. But if we plan for success, if we put it out there in the world, and if we speak it, it may just happen. And be prepared when it does happen. Because, Chris, knowing you for, gosh, how many years have we known each other now? Mostly online, because I don't live next door to you. But it's been like 3 or 4 years that, we've been aware of each other and talked back and forth. I know that you will, at some point, because of the work that you put into it, and you're putting yourself out all the time, I know that deal is going to come through for you. And you have a network of people around you that is going to do what they can to assist you and to reach your goal. So I'm glad that you've put it out there in the universe. And everyone that's listening to this podcast, we're going to help Chris get that big publishing deal.
Excellent, dude. Yeah, no, and I can't say enough about what you just said about planning. Planning's everything. Like, it's one thing to have the vision that you want to publish a book. If you're listening, it's one thing to say, I want to publish a book, or I'm going to write a book. But it's another thing when you put a deadline to it, because when you put a deadline to it, you draw it all in. You bring it in close. It becomes real to you, because you're not having this free-floating deadline that can go on for 5 years. I've talked to people who are still writing books, when I met them in 2015, same book, they haven't gotten it published yet because they just have this free-floating, I'm going to get it done at some point. Whereas when you talked about having free camp and just setting up milestones and deadlines and goals, I tell people, my clients a lot, I said, here's what we're going to do. When we create your production schedule before you start writing, part of it is we need to contact the editorial partners. So who's going to be your proofreader, who's going to be your editor and your book designer? We want to contact them before you start writing, and we want to get on their schedule in about 9 to 10 months. That holds you accountable, because now you're going to mess with somebody else's schedule if you don't finish. And that puts the fire under. So we're writing fast now. Now we're getting the work done, because we know that if we don't get it done at that time, someone else's schedule is in jeopardy. So I love the idea of just having deadlines and putting high accountability on deadlines.
Absolutely. And realize life is going to happen. I mean, I've got, twin 7-year-olds. I am on their schedule. I realize this.
Yes.
I have a 9 to 5 that, if I want to get paid and be able to do things I need to do, I need to make sure that my day job is taken care of. But and this is going to sound selfish, I got to put myself first. Because if I don't put myself first, if I don't get my needs taken care of first, then the job is going to suffer, the kids are going to suffer, and eventually it's going to come back on me, and I'm going to suffer worse because I'm not taking care of myself. I'm not taking care of my needs. So it starts with you. It's weird. We started this conversation a while back, and I think we were saying it before, it starts with the individual and then works out that way. You got to start with yourself, make sure yourself is right, and then you can, affect change, affect inspiration, whatever it is you want to do. And it goes out in circles like that. And eventually we all change the world. And next week, probably, going to have to solve world hunger by Thursday of next week for me. So give me until then. So
Yeah, and it's so true what you said. Making sure you have flexibility. Nothing's ever hard and fast, but just having a deadline helps you to have that, like you said, that point A to point B, just knowing that you're aiming for something, but always being flexible.
Yeah.
Oh man, Tim, it was great to chat with you, man. What a great conversation we had.
We need to do this once a week. I'm just saying.
I know, I'm telling you. But guys, make sure that you find Tim online. You find him at his podcast. Tim, where can guests find you? Where can where can my listeners find you and your podcasts?
Well, Chris, I am at createartpodcast.com. I'm also at findapodcastabout.xyz. I'm on Instagram. I'm on all the social platforms. Unfortunately, I'm a bad person, but those are the two main areas that I would say find me at is the createartpodcast.com. That has a lot of my works, has my books on there. And I'm going to have to hire you to take a look at it and help me get it fixed the way it needs to be. So that way I can be a professional author. And then find a podcast about.xyz is my fun podcast where I help folks find a podcast that's binge worthy.
Love it. All right, Tim. Well, I appreciate your time today and good luck on all the things you're working on to wrap up your 2021 and all the goals you have in 2022.
Hey, thank you, Chris. And, like I said, this community that you've built up, let's get you a book deal. Let's make it happen, folks. Come on. I'm going to challenge your listeners to do that because I'm going to challenge my listeners to do that as well.
Awesome.
How's that for inspiring? I hope you take action on one thing you learned in today's episode. If you haven't subscribed to the podcast and left a review on iTunes, I want to encourage you to do that too. Finally, be sure to visit chrisjonesinc.com to sign up for updates. Don't worry, I won't spam you. And we'll see you back here next week for another episode.